Hi guys, it's Martin from Singletrack Safari again. Welcome to the man cave. This is where I tend to spend a lot of my time out of season, and it's not too untidy, I guess, but let me just give you a quick show around before I tell you what we're talking about today. So yeah, it's a garage, obviously, and there's things absolutely everywhere. And wine. Yeah, and obviously Christmas decorations, because hey, who doesn't have that in their garage? Yeah, it's just bike bits and things all over the shop in here. So why are we in here today? Well, basically, I'm about to build a bike, which might sound a bit unsurprising, but let me just tell you a bit more about what I'm doing. We all ride around on very, very clever bikes these days. A pretty typical trail bike there, and that's 1x11, 170mm travel on the front, 150 on the back. You know, it's what you expect of a trail bike these days. Disc brakes, aluminium frame, flat pedals. You know, it's a clever bit of kit, but these days it's a pretty normal bit of kit. However, back in the olden days, back when I first started riding bikes, this was my first bike, and this is a 1989 Saracen Tough Tracks. That was pretty much an equivalent bike in 1989 to what that common style is these days. Now that sounds like madness. Let me explain. Back in 1989, top of the range bike would have been about 800 quid. Saracen, back in 1989, were an all British brand with British built frames, and they were quite nice. They weren't tacky at all. They were very well respected. And this is the entry level model from 1989. It's exactly the bike I had when I was a kid. So let me give you a quick tour around, just show you how technology has changed. So first of all, the most obvious thing is, yeah, no suspension. And why is there no suspension? Well, because it hadn't been invented. There were no suspension forks, generally speaking, available on the market at the time I bought this bike, when I was a 15-year-old kid. Furthermore, what's it made out of? Steel. It's bloody heavy steel. It's very nicely made. I mean, look at the welds, they're very neat and tidy. But this is a heavy, heavy piece of kit. Secondly, 21 gears. So that's 3 chainrings at the front, 7 at the back, and look at that breadth of gear ratios there. The most exciting thing that you'll find on this drive chain that you hear people talk about is a stuff of legend is bio-paste chainrings. So for all of you people out there who are buying weird egg-shaped rings as if it's something new, no, really, definitely no. Bio-paste was invented for exactly the reason that people are buying oval chain rings these days, and it got dumped by most people in 1990. So we'll see how soon people learn about this in the modern age. Maybe they're a bit better now. The rear mech here is what's called Mountain LX. Mountain LX, roughly equivalent these days probably to SLX. Do your 2 thumb shifters, 7 at the back, 3 at the front. Now what used to happen back in 1989 is that you would put some posh bits where they're most visible, so rear mech, thumb shifters. Then you just fit crap everywhere else, so crap chain set, but most exceptionally, worst brakes ever, these are XH Trail. Look at those nice plastic levers, aren't they beautiful? They operate plastic cantilever brakes. Look at those, look at the power. Can you imagine the power that does not come out of those brakes? Not V-brakes, these are cantilever brakes. These are before V-brakes got invented. So plastic levers, plastic brakes. Bearing in mind, this is like Shimano stuff, you know, it's not like it's cheap, nasty kit. Thumb shifters, 21 gears, steel frame. This stuff basically is what you got on a bike in 1989. It's not like this is a particularly low spec model. It's, you know, it's a fairly well equipped bike for the price point back then. And when I was a kid, I think I paid £369 for one of these back in 1989. So, you know, probably equivalent to buying £1,000 bike these days, but hey. So why am I talking about this Saracen, this ancient Saracen? Well, retro biking is a very big thing these days, and the retro bike scene is a very, very passionate place to be. So I had to start off my collection with my original bike. So that's what got me started. That's what got me doing this job. You know, it's an important, it's a formative part of my history as a person. But I said something about building a bike, right? This is a 1990 Kona Explosif. And this was my first proper bike. This was the top of the range bike from Kona in 1990. And it's just come back from the paint shop where it's been being clear coated, because I've just spent the last 2 months restoring this frame by hand, fitting it with new graphics, filling in rust spots, getting rid of scrapes, putting new paint in where it was needed, splattering new splatters where they were needed. And this bike is going to get built. So what's the big deal? Well, this is actually a pretty rare bike. It was my second bike, and it was the one that really got me into mountain biking. I used to race one of these every weekend. Hard to believe looking at the state of me these days. But yeah, I used to race one of these back in 1990. I had it through until about 92, I guess. And it's that bike, the one you wish never got away. And they're super rare. And I managed to secure this as a bit of a wreck. I'll show you a photo of it now. I bought that basically like a barn find for about £100, and it was an absolute piece of crap. Most of the components have been replaced with cheap, nasty, pointless, horrible bits. The headset was a steel thing that probably cost 99p. It was covered in bits of hay and cobwebs. But fortunately, underneath it all, the frame wasn't too bad. So I picked it up and I am going to rebuild it. I'm not just going to rebuild it, I have bought a big pack of new old stock parts from 1990 to build this up, and by the time I'm finished it's going to be pretty much a new bike. It's a passion project. It's cost me a bit of money, not a fortune, but more than is worth spending on a bike that I'm probably never going to ride. It's probably going to live on my wall somewhere. Oh, that's not true, I'll ride it, but it's going to be very, very dry. So it'll get built slowly. It's going to take me probably a few days on and off when I've got spare time to get it stuck together. I've been waiting basically for the frame to be finished off. Like I say, at the paint shop, it's been having a clear coat, so I've done everything by hand, including the graphics and the splattering and the black paint that's needed to be applied. But I didn't want to do the clear coating because that was giving it its final luster. So yeah, it's here, it's back, it's ready to build. And I'm gonna basically give you a tour through the building of this bike, probably as some kind of time-lapse video, or maybe a series of time-lapse videos. Let's see what happens. So this is my project, and I love this bike so much, and I'm telling you, it's emotional having it back in my life. It really is. So as I build it, I'm going to talk you through the bits that go onto it. I'll stick it in the work stand, and we'll do it piece by piece over the next few days. So excuse my many costume changes. It might look like I flit in and out, being very vain, changing clothes, but basically it's just because I'm going to do this when I've got the time to do it. See you tomorrow.